You ever been in a meeting and thought to yourself, why? This is dumb. In this video, we're going to cover 4 best practices to leading an effective meeting. Let's get into it.
Hi, we are Ted and Lisa Snyder, and we are nonprofit consultants because we believe a better world needs healthier nonprofits. So, meetings. Just this word makes me cringe. I can't tell you how much of my life has been wasted in meetings where I'm sitting there going, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what we're talking about. And this has been going on for 4 hours. And this is completely unnecessary.
There are good meetings too. There are meetings where I look back and I'm like, wow, that was really awesome. We accomplished a ton. But it's the amount of meetings that just shouldn't have existed at all is annoying. And I think everybody watching this can relate, can at least think of one meeting they were like, yeah, that was a waste of everybody's time. Why did we do that?
Now, this is something we really care about because, I mean, if you think about it, if you have a meeting with 6 people and the meeting isn't effective, it doesn't go anywhere, you have lost 6 hours of time that could have been devoted to something else in your nonprofit. Do you realize how much 6 hours can accomplish?
And think about this. Meetings usually happen with the higher level staff members or higher level executives or whatever you want to look at. So if you're wasting those meetings, wasting time in those meetings, that's potentially 6 hours of wasted time in the highest level of achievers in the organization.
It's 6 hours of leadership that has been wasted.
Which is awful.
It's awful. And just to clarify, before we jump into this, we understand that there is a need for community and for communication and for people to get to know each other and to have those interactions. But we need to know the difference between a time where people are connecting on that personal level and the actual purpose of a meeting. And so as we're talking about meetings, we're not saying get rid of everything that isn't the most efficient way to do stuff, because a lot of times relationships and communication, important communication, happens in those inefficient moments.
Yeah, sometimes the purpose of the meeting is building community, and that's fine.
But with this, we need to know. So I think that's a great way to segue right into number 1. Ask yourself, should this meeting even exist?
It's funny. It's funny because it's we've all thought that before, but the reason that meetings happen where you're asking that question, why are we even here, is because usually you've just been doing it that way. It's we've always had a Thursday meeting at lunchtime where we talk through whatever. And over time, you've kind of knocked out a lot of the items on the list that originally were a big issue on those Thursday meetings.
Yep.
And now it's there's nothing to really talk about, but we're here. And so then it just devolves into stupid detail talk, which everybody could have taken care of in emails or not even communicating at all, but just doing it without having to explain what they're doing.
Right. Usually meetings aren't started with the intention of we're just going to waste time, but they're started with a really good intention. And maybe the whole 45-minute meeting really was needed to carve out what the goal and what the project was and what next steps were and how we're going to collaborate and all these different things. But then over time, those things kind of get taken care of. And pretty soon you just have a 45-minute meeting for the sake of 45-minute meetings. And then after a while, you realize we only did 10 minutes worth of valuable work in this 45-minute time frame. And the meeting becomes a ritual versus being something that's actually effective for your organization. And so it's really important that we ask, should the meeting even exist? If you've been having the same meeting for a long amount of time that wasn't started with the intention of it lasting forever, there's a strong likelihood that the meeting is no longer necessary. And you could either adjust the meeting or, a lot of times better, cancel it altogether. And if you need a different format, choose a different day, choose a different time, so that people are walking into it with a different mindset. Because if you just try and make the meeting go back to something valuable, it's hard to break the habits that have been formed.
One of the recommendations that I make all the time is if you find yourself leading meetings that used to be an hour long, but you're we just don't, it just feels like it's a waste of time. Chances are there are probably a couple things that do need to be communicated to the group. So I recommend switching to a 10-minute stand-up meeting or a 5-minute stand-up meeting. We all get together in this area. Nobody sits down. We just chat real quick, answer a couple quick questions, and boom, we're out of there. A stand-up meeting is a great way to change the format so that way everybody knows this is going to be different than it was. I'm not going to bring my lobster and open it and eat it while I'm having this meeting
All
because
these
there's not time for
nonprofit
this.
leaders eating their lobster. Really?
That was a weird example. Just, but hey, that's what we do around here. Weird examples.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2, best practices in leading an effective meeting. Gather the right people around the table. This is so important. It's missed so much where people like, hey, we're going to have a meeting and everyone is invited to the meeting. Half the people could probably still be getting their work done and don't need to be in that meeting at all. And then the other half are having important conversations.
Yep.
So make sure you have the right people around the table. But it also goes the other way. I'm guessing that's what you're going to say?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm going to say it also goes the other way. Make sure the right people are allowed to be at the meeting.
Yes.
So if you have a meeting that involves certain specific like marketing conversation, right? Don't just have that meeting with the executive team, bring in the marketing person. Or
Right.
if you're having a conversation about what should be our next event, like don't just have that with the people who are at the very top. You might be able to say, you know what? You're kind of over like this other area. We don't necessarily need you to be at this meeting. Let's bring in the volunteer that helps with the events, that helps plan our events for us.
Yeah, this is really important. There are times where you just need a everybody meeting, the all staff meeting. We need to all be on the same page, check in with each other, see how things are going. Those are really important. On the flip side, you have other meetings where you need to be intentional about the people that you're bringing around the table. And it's not always based on a certain level within the organization. Sometimes it's going to be a couple of the key staff people and a couple key volunteers where you're working the meeting around the volunteer schedule because maybe they're one of the team leads for an event that you have coming up. And you know that their input, having had boots on the ground for the last 3 events, is going to be really important to your planning going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So don't have meetings based on rank, on positional authority, or job description. Well, maybe job description, but job title. Have meetings based on who are the people that need to be there in order to move this forward in the most effective way where we can save communication time. Because if you get the 5 wrong people around the table, you're going to end up having to communicate with the 5 right people outside of the meeting. And what's going to happen is they're going to ask you questions. Then you're going to have to go back and like rehab the meeting versus if you just sat down and kind of hashed it all out in one go. It's going to save you so much time and be so much more effective.
Absolutely.
At one point in my life, I was at a meeting that I was at kind of consistently, and I was so fed up. I tracked what they talked about for an hour and 20 minutes. And I sat down with the leader afterwards. I said, just so you know, only 7 minutes of today applied to me. And that happens every single week. I was like, you are wasting 4 hours a month having me here. Can I please go back to my desk? And they were like, yeah, we'll make an adjustment. So with that, I did need to be there for that 7 minutes, but it is okay to say we have an hour-long meeting and this one person is going to be here for the first 10 minutes. We're going to get through these pieces that matter to them and a couple other people, and we'll dismiss them. We try to include a ton of people. We're afraid of people feeling left out when a lot of times the people leading under us are just begging to be left out. They're like, I have so much work to do. And I appreciate that you're having this meeting. I know it's important, but it doesn't pertain to me. Can I please go focus on my area? And that is good.
Yeah, so gather the right people around the table and set up your systems of having meetings so that you can gather the right people around the table by opening it up to volunteers, not necessarily having to have certain levels of staff at meetings. Just get the right people there. That's really important. Third, and we talk about this one a ton in our Nonprofit Leadership Academy, is the idea of starting with why. So number 3 is start with why. Yeah. Why are you having the meeting? And then explain that at the beginning of the meeting. Get everybody on the same page. This meeting, the purpose of this meeting is blank. That helps people to not bring in random other conversations that don't have to do with what you're covering right now. That allows you as the leader to keep things focused on the topics that matter to the people who are at the table. You just went through all the trouble to get the right people at the table. This helps, starting with why, helps the topics to stay relevant to those people because everybody's got their own topics.
Yeah, everyone has something that they want to talk about. And so when you call a meeting, make sure that you have specified, this is why we are here. Essentially letting people know what we're covering over the course of this. This is also why it matters. If you do need to have a secondary topic where you're like, we are here today to talk about this upcoming event. Here's why it matters. Here's blah, blah, blah. and you have a lot of the same people in the room who you also need to talk about the side marketing thing that you're doing, make sure to separate it. Don't just go from the why of the event directly into the marketing, because then people start to not trust you with your why.
Mhm.
So finish up the meeting and say, hey, most of you in this room need to know about this thing going on with marketing. So our meeting is done. If you could stay for like 2 minutes after, I just want to fill you in on something quick. But make sure to bookend what the meeting is so that when you say in the future, this is why we're meeting today, and here's how long we're meeting for, and we're actually going to stop at the time. Stop at the time when you say it's 45 minutes, be done. Like that people trust you, because you need to build that trust with people so that they
Mhm.
know that they don't have to like plan all this extra time away from their desk because you set a 45-minute meeting and it consistently goes over an hour.
Mhm.
It's harmful to the people within your organization and the trust of your organization.
And now this might be a little counterintuitive, but starting with why and saying the purpose of this meeting is blank is especially true with meetings that have been long standing.
Yeah.
So if you've been doing the same meeting every Wednesday for an hour for the last 3 years, it's really important to reestablish every week.
Every week.
The purpose of the meeting is blank, because those long standing meetings are the ones that tend to devolve the most, because
Mhm.
everybody's so comfortable with the format of the meeting and how it normally goes. It can be really, really easy to derail those meetings. So don't put this don't not start with why simply because you've been doing the meeting forever. Oh, everybody knows what the why of this meeting is. Don't assume that.
Nope.
And even if they know, they do need to be reminded. You need to be reminded as the leader. It's important for you to say it out loud.
Yes. Number 4, talk to the ones who are for you, not the ones who are against you.
So when you got a meeting with like 10 people in it, and you got one person who's got their arms crossed and they're just kind of like, you can tell that they don't like what you're saying or what the next hill that you're going to take is or whatever that is. Don't direct your meeting at that guy. Okay. Like
Yeah.
we talked about this a little bit in another video, but like, don't talk to that guy during the meeting. Talk to the people who are for you in the meeting. Cause at any even given point, there are going to be 20% of people in a room that are like, no matter what you say, they're like, yeah, we'll do that with you. And then there are another 20% that are going to be like, I don't care what you say. I'm going to fight you on every angle that you have. But the people in the middle are basically, they're going to pick up on whoever you're talking to, and
Yep.
they're going to feel like that's the majority, and then they're going to go with where the majority is. So if you focus on the people who are with you in that meeting, then the large squishy center is going to then move toward the positive side rather than the negative side. But if you focus the entire meeting on trying to convince the guy who's against you, everybody's going to feel like, oh, maybe there's a reason that I should be against this.
Yeah, and it really changes the way that you talk, because when you're talking to people who are for you, you're talking about your vision, where you're going, why it matters, the difference it's going to make, all these really big things. When you're talking to people who are against you, you get on the defense. Well, here's what we're trying to do, and I think it's a good idea. You all should think it's a good idea. The tone of your voice, your body language, the words that you use change. And the people who aren't decided yet are looking at you. They're not looking at the people. They're looking at you saying, man, our leader is being really defensive right now. Apparently this isn't a good idea, but they're trying to make it seem like a good idea. And it confuses people. Versus if you're just like, you know what, we are all in. I'm going to make eye contact with a couple people who are just with it. They get it. They're in it. For sometimes, depending on the size of this meeting where you're having to get people on board, have a meeting before the meeting. Pull aside your top 2 or 3 people who you know understand where you're going and get it, and just clue them in a little bit on what the meeting's going to be about. That way they can get their questions out of the way. And when you have the meeting, they're already like, yeah, this is awesome, because everyone else will pick up on it. And as you have these meetings, you need to know that you are able to move forward the things that need to move forward to make your organization successful. So make sure that you're talking to the people who are for you, not the ones against you. And if you have someone who's really like that in a staff meeting in particular, that might warrant a conversation outside of the meeting.
Right. But I mean, you could even take those people that you know you need their buy-in, and you know that maybe you value having them around because they're kind of critical. and they have critical thinking that helps you stay in check. I know me as a leader,
Yeah.
I tend to be like, woohoo! And Lisa's like, hey, let's rein that in a little bit. I like having that around. So if I'm trying to get a read on how the meeting is going to go before I walk into it, that's probably a smart idea to talk to her beforehand. So that way she's not going like, oh.
Otherwise, you're going to get someone like me who in front of everyone is pushing back. I don't want to do that. You wouldn't want that in a meeting. And that's how it is for every leader. We need to understand the people who are critical aren't necessarily negative. They're concerned. They want to make sure the organization succeeds. So making sure that you're having the right conversations in the right time. Sometimes it's in the big meeting format. Sometimes it's a quick one-on-one. I have this idea. Can I please get your feedback? I know you see things differently than me, and
Yeah.
I need you to lightly tear this apart and make sure I'm not missing something.
Yeah, that's good.
Those are important. But once you're in the meeting, don't go on the defense. Focus on the vision of your organization, where you're going, and the hill that you're taking next.
Absolutely. Now,
With that, we do have another video that's going to be popping up here on the screen. It is about a board member from hell. This is just a great example of the board member that you don't want in your organization, and some tips on how you can work with them and handle them.
yeah, because that meeting is one that I think a lot of people feel like they're wasting time in the board meeting.
Yep.
So we'll see you over there.